And the topic I'll be covering today is the eligibility of Senator Ted Cruz running for the presidential 2016 election. Senator Ted Cruz of the state of Texas is eligible to run and hold the position of President of the United States despite the disputes over his citizenship status. Senator Ted Cruz was born on December 22nd, 1970 in Calgary, Canada, to a mother who was an American citizen from the state of Delaware and a father who was a Cuban refugee. The reason for this argument, the reason that I'm making this claim is that in a Cook County Circuit Court, a case was already filed against him, questioning whether or not he should be eligible to run. Now, if we are to be well-informed voters in the 2016 election, which is gearing up to be one of the most important to date, we need to be able to look past what the media and opponents are slinging our way in order to distract us from seeing what the candidates' established platforms really are. There are three main supports to why Ted Cruz is eligible to run in the 2016 election. The eligibility clause for a presidential candidate under the U.S. Constitution, Article 2, Section 1, Clause 5 reads as, "No person except a natural-born citizen or citizen of the United States at the time of the adoption of this Constitution shall be eligible to the office of president. Neither shall any person be eligible to that office who shall not have attained the age of 35 years and been 14 years resident within the United States." Ted Cruz himself has surpassed the 35 years that are being held at his minimum. He's 45. He has resided in the U.S. for more than 14 years. He is a natural-born citizen. Now, the term natural-born citizen was only a couple years after the enactment of the U.S. Constitution in 1788, brought forth and established under the Naturalization Act of 1790, which establishes a natural-born citizen as a child born to a U.S. citizen, even if that U.S. citizen lives outside the borders of the U.S. To further make that point, in 1830, only a couple years after the Naturalization Act in Schenck versus DuPont, the U.S. Supreme Court further established that the mother's absence from her native home does not eliminate her citizenship from said country. Cruz's mother was in Canada at the time of the physical birth. She remained a U.S. citizen despite her not being on U.S. soil for a prolonged time. At no point in her stay in Canada did she ever dispel her U.S. citizenship or try to become a Canadian citizen. To argue Ted Cruz's natural-born citizen status at this point is inconsistent with the reasoning behind both the U.S. Constitution clause and the Naturalization Act of 1790. In an article entitled "On the Meaning of Natural-Born Citizen" by Paul Clement and Neil Katyal in the Harvard Law Review, the first Congress established under the Naturalization Act that children born abroad to U.S. citizens were U.S. citizens at birth and explicitly recognized that such children were natural-born citizens. Now, this is an argument that they make within this law review. The reason that the first Congress decided to define what a natural-born citizen was, seeing as how the Constitution did not itself define what a natural-born citizen was done in order to protect this young nation state from foreigners who would try to steal the office on the behalf of another foreign government. Senator Ted Cruz has shown, by the definitions of both the Constitution, the Naturalization Act, and under the example of Schenck versus DuPont, which is also to be held in his favor, that he is eligible to hold the position and to run in the presidential election. According to the Constitution, he's past the age of 35, he has resided in the U.S., and he is, under the definition that we have thus far established, a natural-born citizen of these United States. So it is with this that I say, in order for us to make the point is no longer in question. In fact, I feel like the point is mute. For us to continue to argue it would be to completely question what it is that these documents have established. Therefore, when we go to the polls, it is up to us to be informed voters and decide if we're going to vote for a person or if we're going to vote for their platform.
All right. Well, you identified the topic pretty clearly. I thought that was solid. There's not really a preview of what the supporting structure is that you're going to use to argue this point. Although in the body of the speech it's well organized, there's no setup at the beginning. So it makes it a little bit harder for the listener. I do think that you explain a little bit about the controversy there. I think you demonstrate that there's enough of a reason for us to be talking about that since we have that case in Illinois that was being considered. However, I think it probably wouldn't hurt to mention that other candidates who have been mentioned in this class before have raised this as an issue, and that's one of the reasons that we have to talk about it. You know, the Illinois court case is one thing, but when you've got Donald Trump screaming, you know, he's not a citizen, or we should be questioning whether or not he's a citizen, I think it's a little easier for people to see. Why are we talking about this? Oh, because this has come up as an issue by one of the candidates making a claim about it. So I don't think you want to shy away from that. But I thought there was enough explanation to make it argumentative. In the body of the speech, I think that you do signpost a structure pretty well, and it's like I think I mentioned about Timothy's speech, the same sort of thing. At the end of the speech, you've got a very good summary. So looking back over the argument that you made, it's easy to see how things build together to reach the conclusion you're talking about. It would just be nice to have that going in as well. It's, you know, just here's where we're headed. You're giving us a good review. Here's where we were at the argument, but I think it would also help the listeners to know what's coming up at the beginning of the speech. You've got a lot of factual data that refers to what the Constitution says, to what the Naturalization Act says, to a court case. So I think you're doing a good job there. You've got some expert testimony that talks about this from the law review article that you're citing there. There's not really a lot of statistical information on this particular subject. I think there are some examples, and the example in the court case from 1830 is probably a pretty good illustration of this. There were probably prior examples that you could point to that where the same sorts of things, decisions were made. You know, for example, just thinking about it, John McCain is in the same situation. You know, he was born in Panama to American citizens, you know, that sort of thing. But so, and nobody was raising this issue back then, or if it did come up, it was quickly resolved. So it just seems to me like you're missing some other examples that you could use to make the same point that you're talking about here. And of course, we had the same issue with Barack Obama, where people say, "Oh, he wasn't born here," you know, all this other kind of stuff. Is there any doubt that his mother was a U.S. citizen? If there's no doubt that his mother was a U.S. citizen, then he's eligible to be president. That's the period whether he was born, you know, when she was secretly married to the guy in Kenya. The crap that people find to argue about sometimes just amazes me sometimes. All right. But I thought you did a nice, credible job of citing the court cases and dealing with that issue. Generalizations are pretty solid. Because it's kind of a legalistic argument, and because there's maybe not as much, I don't know, passion about it, it feels a little bit like it's sort of dry when you're speaking to us. You're doing a lot of reading. You can look up and maybe talk to us a little bit more, put a little energy into your presentation. It just, I think it would make your argument stronger. All right, thank you.